Right, okay, we'll step in when it. 20. Right. Okay, let's down. Held. One up.
I'll try not to move too much.
Just don't move at all.
Yeah. It'll be the most awkward interview ever. Just me
Don't
just
move. Mine here, actually. Sitting lovely on your shirt there. Oh, that's glorious.
When was the last time you kind of were face to face?
in this sort of intimate environment. Well, probably 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah. Obviously, there's been very minor interactions, but nothing significant.
Did you say that a lot of the time it was like, you know, you kind of on your own together?
Yeah. It was.
Is that more of a thing?
It was quite the affair.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a very intimate. Kind of wanted them all to myself, you know. So, and I felt like that was reciprocated. So it was a lot of time you spent time alone.
Is that made you nervous?
It didn't until sort of now. And now I'm like, I suppose I didn't think about it.
All right, well then let's bring him in. Take a seat. There you go, face to face. Does this feel alright? Just
Yeah. It's like a like 1,000 memories come back all at once, you know.
So, where would you like to start this story?
Well, I suppose what's most important is that this isn't everyone's experience of addiction. This is mine. And I suppose if you want to know where to start, we have to start with the reasons why I became addicted. As a child, I was sort of let down by every aspect of my life for various different reasons. When I was at school, I didn't know it at the time, but I was dyslexic. But I was very often referred to as stupid, thick, not academic. And also we were sort of a very poor family. We lived in a council estate and we didn't have any money. And we didn't have a lot of food, didn't have a lot of anything really. Anything we did have was usually handed down from somebody, you know. So what that meant was at school I wasn't academic, I wasn't clever, thick, and I also wasn't very athletic. Let's say I wasn't going to get picked for the football team because I was too skinny. But then in the big wide world, there's this term, I still don't like it today, half caste. And I've come to be told recently, I don't know if it's true, but I was told that the term comes from the idea that you're not accepted by white people because you're too black, and you're not accepted by black people because you're too white, so you're half caste. And to be honest, that's how it felt. I could never hang out with the white people because I wasn't accepted in some way, sometimes by the parents, not the kids. And the same with black families. My father is Nigerian, but he never taught me the culture in any way. So I kind of brought myself up with with the wrestling and various other shows like Magnum PI and all them ones from the 80s, you know. Watched a lot of TV. TV kind of brought me up in a way. So I was let down at school. I was let down in the wide world because of race. I mean, I had to watch one day, I can't remember my age, but I watched an old man spit in my mum's face in the post office queue because she was in a mixed race relationship, which was evident by my colouring. And she had to stand there in that queue with someone's saliva running down her face. And I had to stand there and watch it, and I watched all the venom come from this old man calling her disgusting. Stuff like that stays with you, you know, starts to form your view of the world. And then lastly, so that's school and that's the wider world. And then in the place where you're supposed to feel the most safe, home, there was a lot of violence. And for a therapeutic journey, what I've come to understand as physical and emotional torture. I spent my whole childhood thinking I was a weak and fearful person because of certain events that happened. You know, your parents, you're supposed to be able to trust them. You know, as a young man, your father's supposed to be the guy that shows you the ropes of life, right? Teaches you what's what in all areas, how to be strong, how to be vulnerable, how to be honest. One incident in particular, when I was a kid, I used to love that feeling, right? When you know when you get in a bath and it's really hot and you get that tingling feeling and your whole body sort of like has this sort of really nice, cozy feeling. And I used to love that feeling as a kid. So much so that quite often I drain a bit of water out of the bath and then get out of the bath and refill it with hot water so I can get in and feel it again, you know? But like I said, we lived in a council house and we had one bathroom and it was next to the kitchen, and it must have been that my dad was in the kitchen cooking, and I just got into the bath after filling it up. It was really hot and I was getting that warm, cozy feeling. Then the door bursts open and he's shouting at me, and he grabs my hair and he shoves my head underwater, and I felt like I was going to die. He held my head underwater a really long time, and he pulled me out and he shouted at me and he put my head underwater again. And the reason he did that is because I was wasting water. You know, I get it. Well, it cost a lot of money, but I'm not sure that was the way to deal with that situation. I'll never forget, to be honest. You know, and there was other things too. You know, he would try and control me by threatening to hurt my brothers and sister and my mum. I had to always be aware of my surroundings all the time. Everything was important. Anything could set my father off. So I was always conscious, you know, had somebody used too much toilet roll? Was the heating on? Was someone left the window open and the heating on? Is there a TV or a light on somewhere that shouldn't be on? Anything like that would kick him off. So I was always very hyper vigilant all the time. And he just instilled fear in me all the time, just drip fed this feeling of worthlessness and fear. And then you compile that with the other experiences of the world, starts to create a very challenging adult, let's say. My whole life was about being a fearful and weak person. That's what I thought I was. Like I said, I was drip fed that from a very, very young age. And I was scared all the time. And that fear translated into anger. I wasn't able to be scared all the time, so quite a lot of the time I would try and be angry, or I would be angry. And that's kind of how it impacted me, really. There was an incident, and I was at college, and I walked in to my family home, and as soon as I opened the front door, I could hear screaming. I walked through the living room door, and my father was violently raining down on my mother and brother. Now, I don't know what had happened at the time. My brother had done something, and my mum was holding on to him and shielding him while my dad was smacking both of them with a slipper. And I was probably about 16 at the time. And something just went, no, not today. Not today. And I'm not going to say it was a big, brave, tough moment, right? It wasn't. But I just lunged forward and I grabbed him and with everything I had, I threw him across the room. And then I stood there. And there was like this real silence, like this deafening silence in the room. Everyone was like, oh wow, what's going to happen now? And I was scared, I was terrified. I didn't do that on purpose. It was an instinct, it was a reaction. And I just stood there waiting. And he walked right up to me, looked me straight in the eyes, and he just laughed. And then he walked away. And me and my mum realised in that moment that this might happen again. And that was very possible that one of us, both of us, could make a really bad decision. I want you to try and understand, I used to cry myself to sleep most nights, praying that my father would die, that I could kill him, that I could get him back for all the things I'd seen him do to my mum, my sister, my brothers, me. And all of a sudden, I was big enough. Me and my mum did not like that situation. And I made the decision, and that's important because there will be some that say, well, he should have left. He wasn't going to leave. He wasn't going anywhere. Many ways, my mum was just like us. She was one of the kids. So I left. And when I moved out, I experienced this weird feeling of loneliness. And this is the thing, right? It was chaos. It was horrible. It was a really horrible place to live, my house, my family home. But it was familiar, which in some bizarre way offered me comfort. And when I was on my own, I was really lonely. And I was scared in a different way. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to be on my own. I didn't even know you had to pay for water at that point. I didn't know any of this stuff. I was completely alone. And I was struggling. And I got some jobs. And then there was this moment where I had quite a few jobs at the time. I was working in a warehouse, I was working in a newsagent's, and I was doing some washing up and stuff in pubs and things like that. And I didn't have any money. I couldn't understand it. I had all of these jobs, I didn't have any money. And I was walking back probably about 11 o'clock at night, and I was walking down this alley to this little flat that I'd got on my own, and I was crying my eyes out. I wasn't suicidal, I can't say I was suicidal, but I definitely had this feeling of wanting to give up. I just couldn't understand how I was going to make it work. And I was walking down this alley and I was crying, and I get to the end of the alley, and on the floor was £20. And I could not believe it. I looked everywhere, I looked around me, I couldn't see anybody. £20, no idea what that meant. What was a shame was there was no shops open because I didn't have any gas. I didn't have any gas at the time, and at the time I had a meter with a card you had to put money onto, so I couldn't cook and there was no heating. And there was 20 quid. It's going to solve my problem. And what that taught me in that moment was, no matter how bad it gets, never give up. Because the moment you give up could be that moment before you find your version of that £20. So I knew I wasn't going to give up, but I had to find a way to exist, right? And one day I'm at the shop getting some stuff and I see these beers on the shelf. Now, my mum and dad didn't drink, so I can't blame anyone at home for that, but I'd had beers with friends and whatnot. So I was just like, so I bought some beers, bought 4 beers probably. And I drank them that night. And I didn't feel lonely anymore. And it helped. Or it felt like it helped. It felt like a solution. It felt like a way to keep moving forward. It felt like it solved. It's more like an antidote to that fear that I was constantly feeling all the time and that not knowing what I was doing. And it was that night, I think, that alcohol became my best friend. It became the person that was always there, the person that never let me down, the person that always made me feel good. And that was it. A friendship was born. It gave me a sense of peace that I'd never experienced in any other way before. But also, it helped me connect to my emotions that I wasn't very good at doing before, and also contradictory, it also helped me get away from them as well. Like I said, it felt like a solution. Stopped me from being alone and kind of mimic this feeling of hope, if you will. And in essence, I was able to outsource my emotional regulation to alcohol. It helped me regulate my emotions. And you can imagine, as a kid, I'd collected up some pretty significant emotions, and I was just completely incapable or unwilling to really look at what they meant. Because emotions are messages. They're like your soul's way of communicating with you, telling you what things mean. Sometimes we misunderstand the meanings of things. It's a bit like a calculator. If you put in the wrong numbers, you get the wrong answer. You've got to have an idea of what's going on first. So alcohol helped me, at the very least, be with those emotions. And then when I wanted to, it helped me get away from them too. So I'm not saying it was the right way to regulate my emotions, but what I said before, it helped me find a way to keep moving forward, to keep going, to not give up in some way. When my first son was born, I had this moment when it's one of the most incredible experiences that life's got to offer. Watching childbirth, you just can't believe that a woman can do that. It's literally unbelievable. And in that moment, I was excited, I was scared, I just had this love that I wanted to give to my son. I already had found a way to love my wife, which was always difficult. Love was something that I kind of thought was a myth, to be honest, till I met my wife. And then we're having a baby. And I saw my son come out, and I just got hit. This feeling of like, oh my God, I'm going to be the best dad. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to love you. I'm going to give you everything I can. But then I got hit with this other feeling. And it's important to know that one feeling doesn't take away the other. It's just what happened. But my whole life I thought, like, why did my dad do those things? Like, why? You know, as a kid, my mum wasn't doing anything wrong. My brothers weren't really doing anything other than just being kids, right? Why did he do those things? And then when my son was born, the question changed from why to how. How could you do those things? I'm feeling this love that I struggle to articulate. It's a feeling that's so powerful, being a parent, being a dad, being a father to a son. He must have felt those things. It's a human feeling, right? So how could he have done the things that he did to us? How? And there was this like psychological unraveling, I suppose. And then that's when alcohol came back in again. And it allowed me to function. It allowed me to keep going. You know, I almost had this running date most nights with a bottle of wine that'd get me through, you know, get me through the next day, stop me from asking questions that were going to tear me apart, you know. And strangely enough, it wasn't, you know, we fast forwarded for a decade, I heavily relied on alcohol as a coping mechanism, as a way of wrestling and subduing these impossible feeling emotions. And then the pandemic came along, and at first. It's great, I suppose, in a weird kind of way. You know, although there was this horror in the world and people were dying, which was awful and, unthinkable. But, for me, there was some time off and it was sunny and we could sit in the garden and drink wine and have a barbecue and all of that sort of thing. And then they told us the lockdowns were going to be a bit longer. And that's when the fear started. I knew that if I didn't change my relationship with alcohol, that I wouldn't make it through the pandemic, that I would most likely drink myself to death. Now, there had been psychological signs that my relationship with alcohol wasn't healthy for a really long time. But in those past few weeks, months, there'd been physical signs too. And I was just ignoring them because I didn't want to break up with alcohol. I didn't want to change that relationship. And here's the thing. If you think that you have a problem with alcohol, if you're questioning whether you have a problem with alcohol, then you probably do. And people say, well, when's the right time? Well, and I'm not sure you really get to choose it. I think got a friend called Patrick, and he said that, have you had enough pain yet? Have you had enough pain yet? Has it taken enough away from your life? Has it caused you enough emotional pain? Has it destroyed enough relationships, lost enough jobs, opportunities? Has all of that happened? Is it enough now for you to turn and face it? I mean, I didn't want it to be alcohol. Alcohol was my best friend. It was my person who never let me down. I didn't want it to be alcohol that had to go. And I was going dairy free. I was going caffeine free. I was gluten free. I was trying all of these things to solve this weird problem I knew was going on within me. And the whole time there was alcohol sort of keeping its head down, And that's not me, mate. But it was alcohol. That was the problem. And for me, I had to break up with alcohol, and I called a counsellor because one day I woke up and I had the most overwhelming panic attacks, and something felt really, really wrong. And I saw a counsellor every day for 2 weeks. And then after about a month, I said, think I might have a problem with alcohol. Turned out this guy was one of the leading specialists in that. And we was in November 29th, 2020. And I said to him, I tell you what, give up after Christmas. And he said, oh yeah, there'll always be a Christmas, there'll always be a birthday, there'll always be a wedding, there'll always be some occasion for you to drink alcohol. But how cool will it be to get to next Christmas having one Christmas under your belt? And I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of angry at him. I was like a bit pissed off, if I'm honest. I was like, I don't want that to be true, but it was true. It was a good point. And he sort of said, well, maybe stop right now. And I couldn't do that. I had to do it my way. So I planned to break up with alcohol that weekend. And I had this weird sort of thing where I got all the good glasses out, all the good wine out, and I because that was my drink, wine, red wine. And I drank on the Thursday, I drank on the Friday, and weirdly enough, my drinking wasn't really out of control. I'd sort of drink to blackout, really. I wasn't really one that went around with friends doing it. In fact, if you asked a lot of my friends at the time, they'd have said to me, no, Johnny hasn't got a problem with alcohol, because the real drinking didn't start till I got home. And that's when it started for me. In fact, I'd leave the pub around about 11 o'clock. They'd all think, oh, boring, sensible Johnny, when I was getting a taxi home to drink 2 or 3 bottles of wine that night, till whenever, So anyway, it was a Saturday night and I'd planned to give up on the Sunday because I wanted to be good to go on the Monday for work. And my wife did this really lovely thing. She said, I know that you like to drink alone, so we shared a bottle of really nice wine, and then she went to bed. And I drank the rest of the wine because we'd opened another bottle, so drank the rest of the wine, and then I went in the kitchen and I had some Jack Daniels and some Coca-Cola, and there was enough for me to drink that night, I suppose, and I started drinking it, and I was happy. I was going back and forth to the kitchen, putting some ice in, putting the Jack in, putting the Coke in. And then one time I went in the kitchen and it was really clear that this was the last one. I put the ice in and I put the Jack in and I put the Coke in, and I went in the living room, sat down in front of the log burner. I just started crying. And I think the reason that happened was because I knew it was the end. Even now, my heart's racing talking about it, because I knew it was going to be the end. I knew this was the last time that I was going to be in this relationship and doing these things, and I was scared. What if I couldn't do it? How would I do this? How would I function without alcohol? How was it going to work? There's always doubt and worry and all these things. And I just cried and cried and cried and cried like I hadn't cried in years. And then I drank the whiskey and I went up to bed. And that was it. I was sober. Look, alcohol didn't abuse me, I abused alcohol. That's the truth of it. It gave me something and I wanted more of it. And when I left the family home, my brothers were really sad because obviously I was the oldest and I made them feel safe, I suppose. And I always felt really guilty about moving out. But later in life, my brother told me that he loved it when I moved out because it gave everybody somewhere else to go, which I never looked at it that way before. But in the early days of me moving out, I wanted to do something for my brothers to make them feel good and happy and cheer them up. So I said, why don't we decorate your bedroom? So my dad's at work and I go to the family home, and I was excited with my brothers. I said, right, let's get this wallpaper off. We're going to paint the walls and that, but we've got to get the wallpaper off first. And I just started in the corner of the room where my bed used to be. And I start pulling off this wallpaper. And underneath this piece of wallpaper that I pulled off was some writing on the wall. And it said, my name is Johnny. I am 8. And I want to die. What that tells me is that 8-year-old Johnny wanted to commit suicide. Didn't want to be around anymore. But yet, here I am, 44 years old. I'm a father of 2 boys and a husband. I like to believe I'm a good friend and a good brother and a good son and a good coach. How's that possible if at 8 years old I didn't want to live anymore? Well, I think it's because of alcohol. Now, I'm not telling you that it's the best solution, it's not. But I don't want to be mad and angry and hate alcohol and tell everybody that they should not drink it and all that stuff. You know, look, some people have problems with alcohol, some people don't. I did. You know, I abused alcohol. I did that. You know, there's no way I can believe that this inanimate object, this bottle of liquid, has all this power over me. It doesn't. I give it the power because of the way it makes me feel. So, you ask me how I feel about alcohol now. I'm grateful. Don't get me wrong, I regret some of my behaviour, some of my decisions and things like that, but I think no human gets through life without regrets and without behaving like a dick sometimes. It just happens, right? But I'm grateful because it gave me a way to stay alive. I don't want to blame anybody. I don't want to be angry. I just want to move on and be a good person. I want my kids to be proud of me. You know, I can't take anything with me, but what I can leave behind is a legacy of my dad was a good man. My husband was a good man. My brother was a good man. Johnny was a good man. And that's what I'm trying to be all the time. I'm trying to be honest, I'm trying to be truthful. I'm trying to help people through difficult things because I've been there and I know how it feels. I know how it feels. This life offers us impossible situations and we have to find ways to cope and manage. Be compassionate to yourself. You found a way to manage, but now it's not serving you, maybe, and you need to make that change. I'm grateful to alcohol. I don't have a role for it in my life anymore, but I look back at it like that old friend that I met at a certain job for a couple of years, or someone I went to uni with. You know, I got a mate I went to uni with and he was a nightmare. Whenever I went out with him, I didn't know what was going to happen. And that's a bit like my relationship with alcohol. You know, I can look back and think about all the horrible things that happened when I drank sometimes, but there were also some nice times too. There were some wonderful weddings and some great parties and some wonderful dinners with my wife, you know, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for them nights sitting in my flat on my own, lonely. And then I had a couple of beers and it felt okay again. And now I'm not glorifying it and I'm not saying it's the right solution. It's not the solution, it's a solution. But at some point, you got to let go and you got to move forward. If you can be brave enough. Because like I said, I spent my whole life up until maybe 25, 27, thinking that I was a scared, worthless person. But then through therapy, I learned that I wasn't fearful and weak. I wasn't scared. I wasn't any of those things. I was brave. I stood up to my father. I protected my brothers, my sister, my mum, as best as I could as a 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, whatever. Did my best. And that's okay. But in order to sit with some of those horrible situations that I've seen, him hurting my family, people I love, people I care about, him hurting me, trying to drown me, trying to lock me in things, just beating me relentlessly. I needed alcohol. You know, help me sleep, for one. Man, I got some good sleep when I was drinking. I had a hangover though. But people tell me I'm really articulate. Some have said to me that you have articulated the way that I didn't know I felt. And in this moment, like, I struggle to find the words to say to you that I can't believe that I'm 4 years sober. 4 years sober. I couldn't have imagined 4 days, 4 weeks, 4 months at one point. I used to think I needed alcohol. It was just a given. Staying in, watching a film, drinking, going out with my friends, drinking, going to a wedding, drinking, going to dinner, drinking. Every part of my life was alcohol. So to be 4 years sober, there's only one way that I can describe it. Freedom. I feel free to be the person I want to be. I get to be a dad now. And I get to go and watch my son's rugby games and cheer him on and tell him how amazing he is. And when he scores a try, it's the best feeling in the world. And when I was a drinker, I'd have sacked that off. Hangover, not doing it. You go, to my wife. I'd hate myself for it, but that's what I would do. You know, what any experience I have now, I'm experiencing life exactly as it is, good and bad. And it just feels great. Sometimes it doesn't. There'll be lots of people on Instagram that tell you, hey, you're going to get your sleep back and you're going to feel really great and all that. Not so much. It's a strange old thing. So then why do it, right? Because I get to go through life now sober and I get to feel all the emotions. One of my sons gets married. I get to feel that emotion. somebody passes away, I get to feel that honour of knowing them. That loss. No matter what it is, I get to feel that now. I don't run away from it. I don't try to disguise it. I can sit with it. I'm free. I'm not a slave to alcohol anymore. It doesn't have to be the boss of me, tell me what I want to do and try and fit it in and constantly feel like I'm letting myself down all the time. You know, it's the truth. It's the truth there's a saying, the freedom that you're looking for is found in the thing that you're avoiding. And I avoided alcohol for a long time in the sense of I knew it was the problem. I knew I had to stop. I knew it's what I needed to do, but I was looking in every other place hoping it would help, only to find it was sobriety. Now, it didn't solve all my problems, but it gave me the space and the freedom to solve my problems as the person that I want to be in life. I get to be Johnny now, whereas before I was just whatever alcohol made me. So being sober to me is the most important thing to me in my life. And people say, what, more important than your family? In a way, because I couldn't be with my family while I was drinking, because all I cared about was alcohol. That was it. You know, so now I feel free. I feel able to experience life in full colour. And to those that have watched this and have listened to this, I'm grateful, thank you. And what I hope that you get from this is that you're not alone. You're not a weirdo, or maybe you are, but you're one of my weirdos. I'm one of your weirdos, whatever. And that your reasons for drinking might be different to mine, or they might be the same. But I can almost guarantee it's got nothing to do with alcohol. And life's not about finding the right answers. It's about asking the right questions. And if you're asking yourself whether you need to change your relationship with alcohol, then I think you know the answer is yes. And you need to look into that. And the journey that will happen from there is one of the best things that will ever happen to you. So I'm 4 years sober now, and I hope there are many, many more years. I'm sure there will be. I never thought it was possible, just like you don't. But it is. And before you know it, you'll be sat there telling somebody what you've learned about sobriety too. And hopefully that'll help them.